Welcome to Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRAR. I'm Alex Gehring, and I used a big boy voice just now
You
to get
did, and I'm
started.
Bobbi Howe, who's sitting here trying to not giggle through that.
Bobby, how are you?
Um, I'm great. I'm
Yeah.
wonderful because as of the time that this podcast is coming out, I will have just returned from the MIPIM conference in Cannes, France for a
All,
week.
all
So
right.
I know, right? It's horrible to be the president of Missouri Realtors and have to go to France for a work conference. Oh, it's
So
horrible to have to
I
do that. The
I am glad you
sacrifices.
brought that up because I think it's important that people know what happens at
Yeah.
the NIPM conference. So can you or MIPM? NIPM? Are
MIPIM,
we nipping them or are we
MIPIM.
mipping them?
Mipimum. Mipimum.
Which one are we doing to them?
We're mipimum.
We're mipping them. We're
Yep.
okay.
And
So
I'll pretend like I've already been there and that but I've heard enough about it. So essentially, it's an international conference around economic development. So I can't tell you what MIPIM stands for because it's probably French if I'm going to guess, but I don't know off the top of my head exactly what MIPIM stands for.
it's
But
not a verb though.
it is, I mean, we could make it a verb.
You're not mipping them.
I'm
That's what I'm
nipping.
saying.
No, that's horrible. We got on a tangent now. However, but international conference in regards to economic development, and NAR helps sponsor the USA Pavilion. So there's an entire part of this conference that is different associations within the US, and the people from other parts of the country come and say, okay, in Missouri, what does the economic outlook look like in Missouri? What would be the benefit of bringing my organization or building a factory or doing business in Missouri? And then there's some from Kansas over there because KCRER was a part of it for a very, very long time. I don't know if we still are or not. I don't believe so. But Florida will have a huge contingency there, and these other organizations come, and it's a great way for us to start expanding development economically within our country, our state. So
Yeah.
it's
It
I'm
sounds like
excited.
Epcot, but it's in Can
It
France.
is. It is Epcot inside the Cannes Film Festival where it happens and the big red carpet and the stairs. That's the building that this happens inside, which I've actually been there before. So it's actually really nice because I'm like, I already know the restaurants I like. I know where to go. I know how to get around the building. But yeah, it's Epcot in France, South
Epcot
of
in
France.
France. All right. So Missouri's gonna send Bobby to France Epcot.
Yep,
Um,
France
very
Epcot.
cool.
Yep.
France.
Which I don't normally spend when I'm at Epcot. I typically spend my time in Mexico. So I don't typically spend my time in France. So but this will be new for me. It'll be fine. Um,
Well, I know I talked about it last time, but I'm still I will still be on my Disney high by the time this comes out. But I'm kind of excited because I remember, and I hope my mom doesn't listen to this podcast, but my mom is she has this memory of going to Epcot with me when I was really little, and how much fun we had and all of this stuff. And here's the deal. Epcot when I was like 5 was not for me. I do not remember having just an incredible time at Epcot. I'm just being honest. My mom is convinced that we just had the time of our lives, and she might be right, but I don't remember just having an amazing time at Epcot. But I have been watching the Disney food blog, which shout out to the Disney food blog on YouTube because they are amazing. I've only been consuming like 2 hours of their content per evening
okay.
to prepare for our Disney trip. And I watched like several, like 3 or 4 hour long Epcot videos. I'm exaggerating now, just a little bit, only a little bit though. And Epcot looks like it is amazing. Like I haven't been there since this experience that I'm pretty sure I'm not like I wasn't very fond of it. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, no wonder my mom thought that we had an incredible time. It's been forever. I haven't been there in 27 years. So should be awesome.
So what I'm going to tell you right now is you need to stop eating right now. Like today, I need you to go on like a 3 week fast so you can have all of the things in Epcot. So the first time I went to Epcot, I was either 8 or 9 years old. I don't remember exactly, but of all the Disney parks, this is probably on me because I'm a complete nerd. Epcot has always been my favorite because of
Really?
just all the learn about what's in England and learn about this, but then eating all of the foods and sampling all the things. Like my favorite time to go is during their wine and dine festival, which is always in November time frame, because you already have all the stuff, but then there's these little bitty kiosks and you get little tickets and you can just try a little bit of everything. But I love Epcot. Now, your girls are probably going to be too young to like really get the full. They're going to love Magic Kingdom. They're going to love Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and whatever. Whatever. I could take or leave Hollywood Studios. But Epcot is my favorite and I love it. That's one of the best things about when you run the Dopey Challenge, you do Disney World, you finish almost all the races in Epcot, but especially when you do the full marathon, you run all the countries at the end. And you can stop and buy beverages or food. And like we've been known to finish the finish line with a margarita from Mexico and a churro in hand. And that's how you cross the finish line. But you get to run and see all that. And I think it's really, really cool.
Wow.
But
Well,
I'm a nerd, so
I'm not
there's
going to
that.
run through it, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to trying to get a 3-year-old to enjoy Epcot. It'll be
That will be, because it's not there's not as many fun. There are still some rides. Yeah, not for little kids though.
some like
There.
ratatouille situation and like some kind of I don't know. We're
But
talking about something that's pretty awesome today, and I'm really excited about it. Before we get into that, though, I want to see if you've got a book bit because book bits are very relevant to our discussion today. Do you have a book bit for today?
always have a book bit. Duh.
Oh, of course, of course. Well, do Bobby's book bit.
Casey, rare. So, my book bit for today is a book by Rolf Potts, and it's called Vagabonding. And it's going to change your relationship with money and travel by showing you that long-term life on the road is not reserved just for rich people, which is why Alex is going to Epcot. There we go. See, I didn't even know that we were going to be talking about Epcot, and I had a travel money book right there ready to go because you will blow your entire savings account at Disney. Just
But I
oh no,
don't
that's why
drink,
you're
so I'm
bringing
not
along
going to
your
blow it
parents.
on
You're gonna blow.
alcohol at least. So that's good.
Well, there's that too. All right, so there. My quote from the book is: "Having an adventure is sometimes just a matter of going out and allowing things to happen in a strange and amazing new environment. Not so much a physical challenge as a psychic one." So the three lessons from the book. Number one, your relationship with money has to change. And I think that's a hard one for a lot of us. But long term travel is a dream that is accessible by anyone and to anyone. Think of Charlie Sheen in Wall Street. Even, and I love your face right there. Even in the 1980s, his idea that he had to make tons of money to live his dream of riding a motorcycle across China was ridiculous. He probably made enough money to do that in just a week. Our relationship with money makes us see travel as a luxury, which is why we think of a vacation just like we think of it as a new car or an expensive TV, that it costs a ton of money and is just a one time thing. The second lesson in the book: vagabonding is really a mindset you have to adopt long before you reach the airport. If you're like most people, you work to make a living and then reward yourself occasionally with vacations, what we've been talking about. Vagabonds, however, work only to travel. It starts with saving money, poring over maps, figuring out your destination and your why, and finally stop making excuses and putting off your journey. Vagabonds are like children in many regards. They look, they learn, they encounter their fears, and they change their habits on the go. And then finally, lesson three: start with simplifying material possessions in 3 steps. They all relate back to simplifying your material possessions because simplicity is a core concept any vagabond has to embrace. After all, you cannot take your entire apartment with you. Number one, stop expanding. Don't buy more stuff. Ooh, that's a hard one. A good pair of shoes and a durable backpack will get you almost anywhere these days. Number two, start saving. Don't eat out so much. Cook at home. Bring lunch to work. Only ramen noodles for a week. My child will be on that one in time anyways. And then finally, number three, reduce. Now it's time to sell those old vintage video games at a garage sale. There's less stuff to pack and more money in your travel fund. It's a win-win. As you're planning, you'll see every dollar saved will now pay off 3 times later. For example, the price of 2 takeout pizzas in America, you can eat delicious food for almost an entire week in India. And that's my book bit, Vagabonding by Rolf Potts.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. That
It's
sounds like
really funny
fun.
because I was actually just having that conversation with Alex's hairdresser yesterday about going over to MIPIM and being in France, and just she was talking about how just expensive it is. And I was like, well, it's expensive to get over there. Yes, airline is extremely expensive, but when you get there, the food is really, really cheap. Like you can have a great 4 course meal in Cannes for like $30, and that includes a glass of wine. Like you can't in the US, you're looking at least $100. So it's but we build it up in our heads because we do big expensive Disney trips, which are not cheap, like traveling across the country, across the world. So,
We are
so who are
getting
we bringing on?
We're going to have John Arnold on today, who is a realtor and longtime realtor, broker, great guy. And he volunteers with an organization called Lead to Read. He's also bringing with him Rhea LeGrande, who's the executive director of Lead to Read. So we're going to get to learn a little bit about this incredible program. There are opportunities to contribute financially to the program, but also to contribute your time, which I think that we're all always looking for more opportunities to collaborate and use our energy and our time for philanthropic things. We know that there are opportunities to throw money, but there's nothing like contributing your skill, talent, and time to a great cause. So I look forward to learning more about it.
Well, I mean, to add to what you just said is, as we know, real estate at its core is a relationship business. And what a better way to build relationships than through community involvement and community improvement. Plain and simple. It's a
Absolutely.
win-win. You help the community and you develop new relationships. So I'm excited to bring John and Rhea on.
Let's go get them.
Welcome back to Kansas City Real Talk. We are here with our guests, Realtor John Arnold and Rhea LeGrande, who is the Executive Director of Lead to Read KC. Thank you for being here with us today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks to you for making the time to be here with us. John, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your career journey. I always love learning about everybody and everything. And then how did you find yourself involved with Lead to Read, Casey?
Sure. Well, been in the business now about 25 years selling real estate. So it's been really good to me, and being part of we've got, I would say, probably one of the better boards across the country, and good representation and leadership. And I've worked with Alex. Both of Alex and I were brokers together with a different real estate company back in the day. And so yeah, been selling houses for 25 years, and it's interesting enough, and I'm not sure, my son made me aware of Lead to Read. He said, "Dad, this is a great thing that I'm involved in." And he's a good salesman, I guess, because he got me and my wife involved in Lead to Read, and we've been doing it now for 3 years. Now have not looked back. It's just been such a rewarding experience for us. Just really enjoy it. And we're empty nesters now, so maybe there's a craving for little ones again.
Well, John, how old is your son, and how did he get involved? And I want to know about that.
Well, my son will be turning 28 next month in the end of March. And he is the associate board chair for Lead to Read. He's moved along, and he works with United Missouri Bank. And I think United Missouri Bank has quite the representation with Lead to Read, all kinds of people donating time. And I believe I got him pulled up on Ben. Reverence is on the board as well, on the executive committee, and he works with Will, and it's kind of showed Will the ropes with Lead to Read. But yeah, and I'm not quite sure how he initially got involved because he was with a different company at the time. But I've always encouraged him to get involved. He's a sales guy like his old man. So the more you're involved, the more engaged you are within the community. And like we tell our realtors, Alex, get involved, establish relationships, be engaged, and selling becomes a lot easier.
We were actually just having that exact conversation before you got on here. So well done. But before we get too far into this conversation, Rhea, tell us a little bit about Lead to Read and its mission.
Yeah, well, Lead to Read Kansas City, we work exclusively on the literacy crisis here in our Kansas City metro area. So we work in first through third grade classrooms, and we know that at the end of third grade, kiddos are actually done being taught how to read, and they need to be able to read to learn. And so if you leave the third grade and you're not able to read, that means you can't go and explore your passion for science or pick up a book and get lost in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. That's my current fourth grader's obsession. And so in Kansas City, there you go, Bobbi. So here in Kansas City, about 21% of third graders are on grade level at the end of third grade. That means 79% are not. And it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of excellence. It's purely for lack of access. And so our goal at Lead to Read Kansas City is to shift those statistics and make it so 100% of Kansas City kids read. John and Will are really and it's funny, I love, John, that it's a family affair. My husband and my stepdad are also reading mentors. And so that's our largest flagship program. We have over 1,700 volunteers go out to 31 schools every single week and read with their reading buddy. We're in Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, Center School District, and we just kicked off Hickman Mills. We also tutor kids with like a vetted tutoring program 3 times a week at select schools. We give out 30,000 books a year at 78 locations across the city, coffee shops, laundromats, transitional houses. And then finally, we bring in local authors to do assemblies with students so that they see themselves full cycle. They see that, okay, I can be a great reader and I can be a great author. For example, you maybe have had a juice from Ruby Jean's Juice. Chris Good, that founder, is our newest author partner this year, and he wrote a great book on being healthy and staying well. So he's been making their rounds in our schools.
I absolutely love that. And my brain's trying to figure out how we can get you up to St. Joseph. That's where I'm at. And I'm like, that would be a great partnership. We'll talk online after this.
Let's talk.
Rhea, I'm curious, what things could lead to, obviously there are a lot of different things, but I'm just curious, maybe statistically, what things might lead to a student not being proficient in reading by the end of the third grade?
Great question, Alex. And I'll pose this with a little bit about me. I actually started off as a teacher, a high school teacher. And so I would, in 10th grade ELA, get students that weren't able to access the great novels of our times. And so I was a teacher in Kansas City public schools for a while and then moved into the nonprofit life. Literacy is not like walking. I have 3 kids myself, and I didn't really do much. And one day they were pulling themselves up by a table and taking their first kind of steps. There's a lot about being a human that is a default evolutionary trait that we get to just kind of take for granted and maybe nudge along. But literacy is a uniquely human endeavor that you have to put a lot of intentionality behind in order to actually make it work. And so you have to be exposed to language. You have to hear different words. You have to hear people speak. You have to be exposed to the fact that that squiggly line is actually an S and it makes a certain set of sounds. And when you put that S with an H, it makes a whole new sound that unless somebody tells you that SH says, shh, it does not make sense, right? It's just a language rule. And so kiddos who have maybe had interrupted education for whatever reason, moving a lot. Transiency is an issue in our city, and it's an issue in most urban centers. Maybe a kiddo wasn't exposed to a ton of language. Poverty has a direct correlation with exposure to things like new books and just a different vocabulary that you hear at home. And then We also just have not put enough in education. Being a former teacher myself, I can say that. In both Missouri and Kansas, we've constantly been in a teacher crisis for the last 10 years where we don't have enough teachers for the number of classrooms that we have. And so I wasn't a great teacher my first year. And if you are a student and you go through our school system and you kind of have a lot of me in my first year, that's not bad, but it certainly is not great. And for example, I didn't have the tools in my first year to meet kids that were struggling, and that can be an issue too. The last thing I'll say, Alex, is I think Americans, we can all think about this together. And really, I love Lead to Read because it gives an avenue to our whole city. We've never been a country with a fully literate population, ever. And it's 2025. I just think personally, we can change that.
One of
So
the things that you just said was linking it to accessibility, and I love that they didn't have. I don't love it, but I appreciate that visual that it's not about it, just the idea that they didn't have access to it. It was there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They could touch the book, they could feel the book. They knew that other people might be able to access it, but to them it was inaccessible. And I'm not sure that it's ever clicked for me in that way before. It's really interesting.
yes, you gave
Yeah.
a great visual there. Like I was able to see the child pulling itself up on the coffee table, but
Mhm.
yet with the book not being able to access. It was yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of our students succeeding, it's certainly not an ability gap, it's just an opportunity gap. And I think working together, we can kind of close that gap. I have a 10-year-old and John knows this, I have twins that are 6, and one of my 6-year-old twins, she's had some visual impairments. It just took us a while to really figure out. And so she's a little bit behind her brother in reading. And why is just because she missed that initial step of being able to see those hard lines of like an A versus an H for a little bit long, even at that really early age, a lot of it looked the same to her. And so we are lucky and in a good, strong position because I'm a former teacher. We have the tools now to help catch her up. But a lot of folks don't have those tools. And if you think about it, as a teacher, I had 33 students in my classroom. I don't know if I would be even able to identify that. And so what Lead to Read does, it's really cool, is that if my daughter, was in a Lead to Read school, then I know for sure she's getting an extra person to sit one-on-one with her once a week to bring that book close to her and help her access that. And that actually increases a student's exposure to words by 50% in just one school year. So, John, you've done this 3 years in a row. It's 150% more exposure. And I think one thing John's shared how much fun he's having and Will's having and his wife is having, but students are having a great time too. That's the number one thing. We recently did a student survey, which we'll share here soon. And the number one word that came out of it is fun. We just said, hey, when you think about your reading mentoring time, what do you think? And that's also kind of a barrier. Like if you have struggled in school, maybe reading is not a ton of fun, or if you're coming from a house where there's not a lot of literate folks there, then maybe you don't know that reading is full of joy. And so, beyond just the academic skills, Lead to Read also inserts a lot of joy in reading. And I think the joy of reading is a human right.
That's- As someone who is, I mean, we have a book bit on our episode every single episode because I love reading, and so that just this you've really captured my heart in listening all of this. So John, what does the time commitment look like to you,
Mhm.
and how do you work that into your schedule?
Well, and that's why I reached out to, the board because I just felt like this was such an easy lift. And most of us realtors, our schedules are flexible. And honestly, it is the best half hour spent for over lunch for me. I go down to Quality Hill Charter School downtown every Wednesday, and that is from basically 12 to 12:30, and it's the best lunch hour of the week for me.
Yeah, if I could add on, we purposely try to make it really easy. We have a small full-time staff. We're a really scrappy small nonprofit. So any dollar you give to us goes directly into our staff or into a book that gets into kids' hands. But we have a small full-time staff, and a lot of us used to work in schools, so we understand we make it easy for schools and we make it really easy for volunteers. So we have a really strong part-time staff that is dedicated to a school. So a volunteer walks up to that school, our part-time staff is there to meet them, greet them, help them get to the classroom, make sure they have some books for kids to read. And then when that 30 minutes is up, helps them say bye, because sometimes the kid doesn't want to leave and have to go back to their fast math facts or whatever is next, and then walks you to the door and gets you on your way. And so it really works for folks that have 30 minutes over their lunch break. My husband also works downtown, and so he walks over a lot as well. And it just says, I can do this all in under 40 minutes.
I love that you described yourself as being scrappy, your staff. Like I feel that. I was like, yes, good scrappy people. We need more scrappy people.
Yeah, absolutely.
John,
one thing that go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
oh, you might have been getting ready to say, go ahead.
Well, I was just getting ready to say the joy part of it is not only with your student, you can genuinely see the teachers, how appreciative they are. I mean, because just us being able to be one-on-one, they can't do that. It's not physically possible. And they are so
Totally.
appreciative when we get there and so excited. And it's just it's an all-around feel good, I'm telling you.
So,
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, John. Sorry, I was just, the teachers do love it. We do surveys of our school leaders and teachers, and year over year, they're like, please come back. We love it. The only barrier we have is we don't, even though we have more volunteers than we ever have, our principals want us in more classrooms and the superintendents want us in more schools, and we just need, more people. And it shows to the teachers and principals and students, the whole community cares that I can read this book. And I won't share my age, but if I think about it, I was really like Lamar Burton, like reading Rainbow. And there was always something on TV that was like, reading is power, reading is the best. And we just don't really see that anymore. And so the fact that we have that proximity, that your neighbors, the guys that work in the building across the street, the nurses up the hill, they care that you can read this book. I mean, it's really, really special.
so important. Well, John, can you give us an idea? Rhea kind of went through as somebody's arriving and all of that. Can you give us an idea of the what it looks like when you're sitting down with the kids and you're going through it? How many kids are there? What kind of books do you read? And what are some of the feelings and reactions that you get from the students as that's going on?
Sure. And I think my situation is probably a little bit unique and stuff that I'm interested in too, architecture downtown, what's going on downtown. So I get the pleasure of going downtown and going to Quality Hill, which this school is a building that was converted from an old hotel. So it looks like an old Victorian building. So we all meet. We've got a great like one of the folks that does help out with Lead to Read. She meets us on the front porch. So we're on the front porch of this old Victorian style building, and the books are all out there. We check in. We all have lanyards to show that we are with the group. The school is very secure, which I'm sure all the schools are. And then there's 2 classes. At the time we all get let in, and it's kind of funny, but it's the part of the best, it's the best part of it is we're all kind of going in all these adults lined up going in this school. So it's you feel kind of funny. It takes you back, right? And you walk into the school and you catch eye with your student. It is the best. It's hard to describe, I know this is not a video, but every time I walk in, my student's name is Ailey, and her mouth, her hand covers her mouth, and her legs start shaking. And so speaking to the books, I think the books, and Lee, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it depends on the student. We've got, Ailey is from Cuba, and I started with her last year as a 2nd grader. She was so embarrassed. She was shy. And her English wasn't, where it is today. And I was always encouraging her. I'm like, Ailey, you can speak two languages. I just know English and I struggle with that. And I just always encourage her. I mean, you're going to be a person that can speak two languages because her family speaks it at home. So this is my second year. Her confidence has turned, it's unbelievable how much more confident she is. So a little bit more specific, when we get into our classroom, we go on to this, there's a little couch that Ailey and I meet, and we sit on the couch together. Some people they bring a stool and they're in the corner of the room. Everybody just kind of scatters out where they're more comfortable. Yeah, thankfully I have a couch and I don't have to get on the floor because I have a hard time getting back up. But yeah, it depends on the level of the student, what they're reading. But we're doing, most of ours are just little paperback, 15-page books. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
and the other good thing, so my first year, I had another student by the name of Johnny, a little girl. Well, I would see her leaving and she'd run up to me. She graduated from the program. She'd see me and run up and hug me. And I'm telling you, it's free. It's all free, and you get these things. So, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that kind of gives you a clear picture of what we do.
It does.
Well, and can I add a little bit on to that, John? I think the barrier for some volunteers that I talk to, they're like, well, I'm not a reading teacher. And trust me when I say you do not have to be. There is no world in which you need to have any knowledge of how to teach reading. You just need to be able to read a first, second, or third grade book, which I feel like I'm confident all the folks that come to us can do. And we're 31 schools. Every school does it a little different, but some schools, you go to the library. Other schools, you meet in the classrooms. You go in the cafeteria. Some schools have cool like maker spaces. And so schools value you so much, and it is just, they really do their best alongside our staff to make sure all the volunteers are taken care of, have a good space. And a lot of the teachers will help the students pick a book. And so sometimes it's because the teacher is like, gosh, you really need to work on blended sounds. I'm going to give you all these 15-page books that are paperbacks and have kind of the same level of words. Some kiddos are just resistant and they need that joy and confident piece. So you might be reading a lot of Avengers and Spider-Man, just like to the kid to get them excited about what's inside of a book. But there's a lot of intentionality behind the scenes. And so our reading mentors' jobs is to just show up and read the books, and then it's part of that bigger plan.
And I will say too, the staff is really good about reminding us of concentrating on a certain, reading technique or whatever. Hey, you might want to be working on this. So yeah, like Leah says, you don't have to be a certified teacher to do this. That you get a lot of good advice from the staff. And honestly, there's been times too. I mean, we are even a little more than just we are a mentor, and not just reading with them, because I've spent time. Ailey's had some home life problems. And sometimes I've spent a good portion of the 30 minutes. I just let her talk and just be there for her, because, a lot of these kids don't have that. They don't have somebody to listen to. And so, yeah, I was always kind of felt like I needed to go in there. We need to read. You need to learn. You've got to learn to read. And I've had the staff, we talk about these things. So I'm not like that anymore. If sometimes, it's a little having a difficult time focusing, and you just kind of just roll with it. And so, yeah, I've learned a great deal too. And it's obvious. I can see the change in this little girl since I've started with her.
You actually,
we call,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we call our reading mentors on purpose because of what John said. And if you go to our website, leadtoreadkc.org, you can see a video of someone who graduated the program years ago. And his name is Mauricio. And he had a mentor just like John, who was an engineer. And Mauricio just started at UMKC in engineering. And before he had his mentor, it talks about, I didn't know what engineering was. And so, yeah, it can make a lifelong difference in ways you don't know.
You both just hit on what I was gonna ask about it. Like, yes, we're helping these children be literate. We're helping them with their education. And John was talking about Ailey's confidence levels. And you're forever changing the lives of these children. Like that third, fourth grade is when you really start having those core memories that stick with you. Like I can remember some adults in my life when I was in third and fourth grade, went through some rough lifetime. And those people forever made a difference in my life. So talking about Mauricio is now an engineer who had
Yeah.
that situation ever happen, who knows what Mauricio's life would look like now. So that's just that gets me emotional just thinking about it, just looking at
Mhm.
it. So just flipping back here just a little bit, John, we talked a little bit about this, but do you feel like your community involvement is affecting your career, and how so?
You know, um, you know how fast-paced real estate can be. And that 30 minutes, to answer your question, does it do anything with it slows me down. It makes me think of what's important. And honestly, I've talked to Alex about this. Our industry, we've got to have a good educated community.
Mhm.
These could be future realtors, and I don't know of any realtors that can't read and that aren't proficient in reading. And that's the way it is for everything. And when you have an educate, and I'm big into our community from a business standpoint, belonging to the downtown council, all of these things come together. You want good educated kids. You want
Yes.
good educated kids to stay here and be involved in this community. So for me, it all ties together. It's a big picture thing. And maybe I look at it like that more because I am getting to be one of those older guys, but it's certainly, yeah, I mean, it slows me down to you know, help out somebody, not only the students but the teachers, and in the end, it's going to be good for all of us.
That's the right way to look at it, though. I mean,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the whole idea of doing things like this is to benefit our community, John. And thanks for sharing. I mean, that was
Yeah.
beautiful. I've got a question for you guys too, on this is so cheesy, and I promise we don't bring it up very often, but it's such a buzzword right now, and that's artificial intelligence. So obviously in real estate, we're talking a lot about artificial intelligence, and I am very involved in the education space as well. Both of my parents were teachers. My wife works for a school
That's
district.
awesome.
I worked for a school district at one point as well. And obviously, artificial intelligence is a huge conversation right now for education and how that could impact things. And I do feel that one of the huge benefits of what you guys are doing is because there are a lot of people that would hear this and they'd be like, well, why can't artificial intelligence help these kids read or read these books to these kids? And you know that there are people that are out there thinking of that, like,
Sure.
this can be done.
Yeah.
But just the sheer power of having John in front of somebody, reading to them and demonstrating that it can be done, and that this is a human being who also has had difficulties in their life, who overcame things all of us have, and they're here in front of you reading. It is a totally different experience than
Yeah.
having artificial intelligence do it for you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm just curious if I mean, I feel like programs like this are going to become more and more necessary as we become more and more reliant on artificial intelligence to build community for us and to play the role of
Mm.
teachers and leaders in spaces. I don't know. That's not really a
Yeah.
question. That's more of just a general statement. But I think what you guys are doing is so important as this kind of
Yeah.
technology continues to evolve.
I completely agree, Alex. I mean, there's a couple of things that makes me think about. One, nothing really replaces the human looking in your eye and being happy to see you. Maya Angelou, she talks about you forget what a person might say or do or teach you, but you never forget how they make you feel. And that is the truth of, I know, my life. And I think that's the truth of a kiddo. And so, one, I think that can't be replaced by artificial intelligence. On the other level, so to get to the nerdy stuff, there's like 5 pillars of reading, the science of reading, and a few of them also can't really be replaced by artificial intelligence on its own. One being comprehension. So even if artificial intelligence reads me all my books, unless I've had practice thinking and talking to someone about that book, I might still not know what actually happened. And so even if artificial intelligence tells me, well, here's the climax and here's the resolution, I can't know that without that. And so rather than artificial intelligence being a tool, it becomes a crutch. And we want kids to be able to have the literacy skills to use artificial intelligence as a tool, not to depend on it as a crutch. I mean, even my 4th grader, I'm like, okay, ChatGPT, she has to do some like poster. You have to think about what questions to ask it to get the right answers. And then you have to be able to discern, okay, I have a poster project. What fits on my poster? And so we're already in that. And we've seen that historically, especially in under-resourced urban core. We got late to the game with coding. And now coding is almost obsolete. It's not the same. People are talking about how artificial intelligence can replace that. So we simply cannot make it so that kiddos are not able to read and then 20 years down the line be like, gosh, too bad they couldn't use artificial intelligence as a tool to make that new company our community needs, to pull their family out of poverty, to invent something fantastic. I mean, that's my biggest thing is we have to be able to make sure they're literate so they could use artificial intelligence as a tool. And with the business aspect, I think it's full circle. We're actually having our inaugural business breakfast on April 24th. You all are invited. We would love to get the word out about that because a lot of our long-term benefactors, both fiscally and volunteer-wise, are companies. I'm talking J.E. Dunn, Burns and McDonald, UMB Bank, companies that are in the city who have said out loud, we need an educated, literate core to be our employers, to be our consumers. Everything good is correlated with literacy, community safety, community economic progress, like health. We are even having someone from Children's Mercy Hospital on our panel because they're seeing that connection between literacy and strong health outcomes for children. So on the day-to-day, you feel good, you see your kiddo, you re-fall in love with reading, your inner kid comes out. But on the macro level, you're really making Kansas City a better city for all of us, regardless of our ventures.
Absolutely love that. This has probably been one of the ones that touched me more than any of the other ones we've done. So thank you so much for your time today. One last question for you, Rhea. If one of our listeners wants to get involved with Lead to Read KC, what do they need to do?
Please visit us at leadtoreadkc.org. Directly from there, you can apply to be a reading mentor. You can learn more. If you have more conversations or questions or want to be a business that is in direct support of our business breakfast, I'll give you my email. It's Rhea, RHEA, at leadtoreadkc.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, John and Rhea. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.